The trade deadline is almost here, which means you are seeing a bunch of absolutely crazy trade packages online with very little thought put into them. But in this video, we're going to dig into some that are a bit more objectively based. The whole idea, thinking from like a front office standpoint, is figuring out the surplus value of the player that you have and the surplus value of the assets you're acquiring, kind of reconciling those differences. This is very similar to a video that I did last year. I'm going to walk you through kind of how I think front offices are arriving at some of these conclusions and try to make some deals as well. So we'll look at some prospects and other names. We'll do 5 guys, hop through the chapters if you just want to see the packages I'm putting together for some of these names. We'll start with Tarik Skubal, who of course is the prize. And the fascinating part about him, I did a video very similar to this a bit ago, and I did some stuff for MLB Network on what the packages would look like. And I think I've corrected slightly from that. I'm not entirely sure why, just kind of thinking a bit more rationally, getting feedback from the industry on what I thought. Tarik Skubal's owed a lot of money. So when we look at Joe Ryan next, they have very similar surplus value notes, despite the fact I do think Tarik Skubal is obviously a better pitcher, one of the top 5 pitchers in baseball, maybe top 3, depending on how you're looking at things. He's owed so much money that the surplus value kind of comes down a bit. So we're taking the money owed to him for the final 2 months of the season, comparing that to the projected WAR that he will put up in those couple months, and then the value of that WAR. And I'm changing this value of WAR slightly. In the past, I used $10 million per 1 win. What I'm doing now is using what I believe is Ben Clemens' method of FanGraphs. He does awesome work. He basically said teams pay more for more incremental WAR, so it's not linear. So for that first WAR, you're paying about $8 million. The next WAR, you're paying about 10, and then as you get above 2-3, you're paying about $12 million per WAR. It's kind of scaled up slightly. As a result of that, some of the value of WAR calculations might look slightly different. The other distinction here, valuing the postseason is pretty fascinating, and that's what I really tried to tackle in this video that's different than prior ones. Figuring out the value to the team, example, Tigers here, that Tarik Skubal could pitch for you in the postseason versus the almost guarantee that if he goes to the Dodgers, he will pitch for you in the postseason. So that valuation is kind of baked in as well. And the other thing here is that I'm not necessarily trying to match surplus values you're going to see, because the pool of players available at the deadline is limited relative to the offseason. So you don't run into as much rational thought. The market's less efficient in terms of buyers and sellers. So you're going to get overpays almost consistently across the board. So we're trying to shoot for, I don't know, let's say 10 to 20-ish million dollars of overpay for some of the teams that are giving up the assets. How am I arriving at the asset value of the prospect? I'm using FanGraphs, which just updated their valuations, so these are going to look different from priors as well. CBA impacts on arbitration and other stuff, taking that, throwing it away. Just an impossible thing, I think, to approach, although teams are obviously thinking about it. So the big thing here that I want to dig into a little more, you'll see this line, this postseason value that I'm adding in. I got about $2 million to the Tigers. The way to look at this, and the way I'm thinking about it, is imperfect, but I think it's a thought, and I'm open to feedback in the comments about whether this is even close to accurate. But I'm thinking about it this way, and I think the best way to show it is to contrast the Dodgers, who basically have a 99% chance of getting to the division series, in which case you would probably get maybe 1 to 2 starts of a Tarik Skubal, and valuing that WAR a little differently than we're valuing regular season WAR, and then doing that progressively through different rounds. And the big thing you can see is that consistently, the reason I think the Dodgers are going to be players for so many of these guys is that you're almost guaranteeing this postseason value for them relative to a team like the Tigers. The Tigers right now, per FanGraphs, have like a 28% chance of making the playoffs. So you got a 28% chance that you get Skubal for that wild card series to throw one game, and then progressively it gets less probable that he would throw for you in subsequent rounds because, of course, you're probably going to get knocked out early because you're the Tigers. So I have it as about a $15 million difference just on the postseason side of things. So when you look at the surplus value to the Tigers of Tarik Skubal, which is right at about $18 million, compare that to the Dodgers, this overpay, which looks massive initially to go Edward Quintero and Zach Root, who I think is kind of an interesting arm that's on the up and up in the Dodgers organization. Initially, if you just remove this, I'm even going to black this out for a second, this is a massive overpay. $41 million overpay per FanGraphs valuations of both of these prospects. Quintero, 50 future value bat, which lines up about a top 100 player in baseball, 2.5 WAR a season. Zach Root, having like an up-and-coming pitcher, he's 15 mil, projected maybe like 1.5 WAR. From the pitching standpoint, that gets you to 60 million. You subtract the 60 million from this, and if you're looking at this from the Tigers' perspective, you're going, oh yeah, we're getting a bunch of value back for a guy that is not honestly that valuable to us. Now, if you're the Dodgers, who have basically a guarantee of getting into the postseason here and going, we got him for the division series, there's a really good chance we get him to make 2 starts in the championship series as well. That's how you can pull this number down from 41-ish to about 23. Still an overpay, still a huge overpay by the Dodgers. So maybe this is a different arm. Maybe this is a different bat. But I think that's an important thing to nail throughout this. And I'm not going to show it for every single team, but yeah, it's different, and we'll walk through it for each of these names. So anyways, we'll talk through some of the packages here. This used to be Mike Sirota and Christian Zazueta. I think that's maybe a little rich. I think both those guys have leveled up so much the Dodgers probably won't give them up for a rental on Skubal. You also have the angle that I'm not factoring in here of your probability of signing the guy, which maybe makes you a bit more understanding of the prospects you would give up. Zach Root, Quintero, both very good players. Interesting names. The Yankees, also a player here, I think. Now, the Tigers want controllable pitching, which is another point we'll get to in a second. So I tried to go pitching bias on a lot of these. My main takeaway with the Yankees is that I think the opposing team looking at the Yankees prospects has to like a smaller pool of names. If you go to FanGraphs board, which I love going to, and you peek at what the Yankees actually have, there's not a lot of names here. George Lombard, I don't think they're trading. I don't think they're trading Legrand, who I would have above Elmer Rodriguez. So you're basically looking at, okay, you got Ben Hess, Spencer Jones, and Elmer Rodriguez. You don't have a lot of depth here that I think teams would kind of hone in on and go, we like this guy or this or that. It's basically, you have to love one of these names if you're the Tigers, which perhaps they do. Maybe they like Ben Hess, who I kind of comp to Gavin Williams in a way. Big dude, big curveball, nice fastball. Elmer Rodriguez, we saw up in the majors, kind of underperformed a bit, probably needs some work. The Braves are a very fun team that I think has a lot of probability to get this done, partially because they are very pitching heavy. And that means you could go with a J.R. Ritchie and a Didier Fuentes, which is, again, it's a massive overpay. But you got to beat the Dodgers package is my point here. So all of these, of course, are going to look like overpays because the Dodgers, I always think, will get last. They'll be like the last call team in this trade where they can just kind of hop in and go, cool, we'll add this in or we'll take this away and add that based on what these other teams are adding because the Dodgers farm is so strong. Ritchie and Fuentes, it's a lot for Skubal. I'd say don't do that, honestly. I don't think they're going to do this. But some combination of these arms, maybe a Ritchie and a lower guy like a Luke Sennard or something like that, could get done. The Rays are also very interesting as well. Now, Ken Rosenthal also had a tweet that showed names potential fits, which I thought was interesting because these aren't prospects. These are kind of, well, maybe they are prospects. I guess Andrew Painter's a prospect. A lot of these guys are present major league talent. So we could kind of model them out as well, which I did down here. And we could see that these are like chunky names to give up, in my opinion. And I don't necessarily see like the Dodgers looking at the surplus of Emmett Sheehan based on how I calculated it. You know, I'm projecting the WAR, and I'll link to the sheet so you can kind of see some of my calculations. And I won't bore you, but you're basically applying like a discount rate, time value of money to the actual salary. I'm also applying what I would call like a discount rate to future WAR on a pitcher because of the variability in pitching that's heavier than it would be for position players. And I'm coming to the terms here that it's about $58 million, which I do like because that roughly recks back to right around like a 50 future value, 60 future value pitcher, which is fair. Emmett Sheehan's projected as like a top 40 pitcher prior to this season, and I do think in subsequent seasons he's right in that area. Andrew Painter is another name thrown in there, which is, that'd be a hefty price tag. Dombrowski, we've seen him do crazy things in the past. Painter, very similar, I would honestly say a little lower than Emmett Sheehan, partially just because you have more runway, more years, but let's guarantee that he'll be successful. So I think there's a chance that maybe the Phillies go to the table with an Andrew Painter and go, yeah, like this is a massive overpay versus this calc, which again, I do think lines up pretty nicely with like a 50 future value, 55 future value pitcher right here, which is in this window. It's just you have a longer runway to do it. And as you project the 2030 season for Andrew Painter, anything could happen, man. That dude could blow out again. He could just not be good. His fastball hasn't shown that much success relative to what he was as a prospect. But I do think like these names are not all created equal, in my opinion. Will Warren might even have greater surplus than Emmett Sheehan. Ian Seymour, good pitcher, fun, but there's no way his surplus is near what we're looking at down here. So just keep that in mind as you see trade packages float around. Is that oftentimes they'll mention names together. In the reality of things, I don't think a lot of these names line up from a value perspective. But Sheehan and Painter, I think, are a great example. So do I think Tarik Skubal gets traded? Where does he go? I do. And I think he goes to the Rays. Yeah. Because if I'm the Tigers, I'm rational about the fact that I'm probably not going to pay Tarik Skubal $450 million or more to be a Tiger for life. I think the Rays are a uniquely positioned team where they have some really fun arms up top. And I'm not just going to say the Dodgers because, like, duh, the Dodgers are obviously going to be in it. But you got to go fun here. Give me the Rays. Michael Fred is a really fun arm. I'll pop his data up here just to take a peek to show you guys he was traded from the Orioles in the Shane Baz trade. Pretty vertical fastball. Pretty stock release traits. I know my stuff model doesn't love him here, but his results have been really strong. He's been up to AAA. He gets a lot of miss. He's on the ground a lot. the combination of like the flat approach four seam alongside a nice slider cutter combo, I think is legit. So he'd be a really fun get for them. Tigers are decent at pitching development as well. That's Tarik Skubal. Little different here, Joe Ryan. You're going to notice, again, the surplus value is not that different here. The difference is that he's only owed $2 million rest of the season, which is 4 times less or so than Tarik Skubal. Of course, worst pitcher. So in approaching the value of the WAR from a postseason standpoint to the Twins is a little lower than what it was to the Tigers. I had the Tigers around, was like $3 million in the postseason value, just postseason value alone. Of course, I'm also layering in the potential to QO the guy, which is going to get you back a draft pick that kind of lines up with this 40 plus 45 future value area, I would say, based on where those comp round picks usually end up. And as a result of that, you run into a kind of similar number to Skubal. And we're getting to the same idea here. Where do I think Joe Ryan goes? How about the Cubs? Interesting fit. They really need an arm. I would love more velocity on the arm they're getting, but Joe Ryan's a top 20, 25 pitcher in baseball. And as a result of that, we could see a little different modeling here from a postseason value perspective. The Dodgers, we were talking like close to almost $20 million because of their guarantees. Interesting with the Cubs, they're 81% right now to get into the postseason, which means I'm basically saying there's an 81% chance that you get one Joe Ryan start in the postseason, which I think would be worth around 0.2 WAR. And then we're valuing that postseason WAR a little differently than we're valuing the regular season WAR. Then again, progressively, Division Series, Championship Series, World Series, you get about $6 to $7 million. So again, Tigers POV, looking at Jackson Wiggins and Ariel Armas, who's kind of a defense-first catching prospect, be interesting maybe for the Twins. I know that doesn't make sense. They just drafted Von Lackey, but in that vein of like some lower-level guy alongside of Jackson Wiggins could make sense for Joe Ryan. $14 million surplus here. To the Cubs, it's only $8 million. Do they actually want to pay $8 million over, per my calculations, what they actually think the value of a Joe Ryan would be? Not entirely sure, but again, the main thing to highlight here is just the difference in the postseason value of the player. I do think at the deadline has a large swing on the perception of value between organizations. Could the Padres get it done? They have a really bad farm, in my opinion. There's just like no one there unless they want to trade Salas, which would be a very AJ Preller thing to do. I don't think he would go to the Twins again because of Von Lackey, but maybe you go like a Cash Mayfield and Miguel Mendez. I like Mendez a bit, kind of like a big mix guy. Cash, low velo lefty, he's gotten results. I think he needs obviously more velo to survive in Major League Baseball. Don't love this package. Don't think it gets done. Ramon Marquez, Moises Cache, not sure to say his name. Again, same idea that the Padres package. The Cardinals are an interesting name here too. Their playoff probability is like kind of the 50-50 area, so they would probably be about half this number, let's say 3 to 4 million. But they have the names to get it done because they've drafted so much pitching. Quinn Matthews is a name that was really fun. He struggled last year. He's been better this year. Josh Baez. Would you combo both those guys up to get Joe Ryan on the potential that you maybe get to the DS or CS if you're really lucky? Yeah, I could see that happening. Like, I don't think it's insane. And I think this is a competitive package relative to the one the Cubs could offer. So yeah, I do think, again, Joe Ryan gets moved. If you want me to predict where, I will say the Cubs. I think the Cubs have been uniquely positioned to trade a guy like Jackson Wiggins or Jefferson Rojas, which we'll get to on a future trade here. These guys are rentals. Little different than a guy who has control. These are very much not going to get done at the deadline, in my opinion. So if you're asking me whether Reid Detmers gets traded, I say no. But if he were to get traded, then we can look at, again, how that surplus works. It's about double that of a Tarik Skubal or a Joe Ryan. Similar idea. We're projecting some ARB numbers here. Again, CBA stuff, just kind of got to throw it away. To the Angels, there's basically zero postseason edition as well. They're not getting into the playoffs. It's not going to happen. Reid Detmers is projected really strongly. We're going to discount it. We're going to say he's like a 2.5 WAR guy in 2027. We're going to scale that back slightly just based on the aging curve, pull him down to 2. I'm going to discount that WAR slightly. Similar idea here, using our tiered value of WAR standpoint to get us to about 32 million in surplus. So yeah, Bob Nightingale saying that Reid Detmers is going to command more than Tarik Skubal, per my calculations, very much correct. And I imagine a lot of teams internally believe the same thing. Who are just going to get him? Jeff Passan, Kyler McDaniel had a really good piece that ranked a lot of these names. I think I have that linked to somewhere, or I'll at least link to it in the video description. And they have the White Sox in there, which I love. White Sox need pitching. Why not go get Reid Detmers? Kind of a really fun arm that, you know, despite the fact I rag on the Angels a lot for not being great at pitching development, they did a pretty good job converting from a reliever to a starter. Now, would you give up Caleb Bonemer, who is a very fun bat? I'll take a peek at him here. I do believe he's swinging and missing a bit more this year, but he lifts the ball really hard. It's more average chase zone whiff. You go back to 25, he was much, much better. So again, I think it's just some adaptation to better pitching, but we have it in his repertoire here that he's been an amazing player from a contact quality standpoint, from an approach standpoint. He's a really fun bat. Would you give him up for Reid Detmers, I kind of think you would have to. You would have to put in something chunky here to get to the point where you can beat, the Braves, who would maybe offer an Eric Hartman, who's kind of a breakout guy, Briggs McKenzie from their depth. The Brewers maybe are in this conversation. They could go with Jet Williams, who they got from the Mets for Sproat. Bishop Letson's kind of a really fun variable pitcher that's like on that fringe of the 45 plus to 50 to me, who could be valuable. So to me, the Brewers and the White Sox could offer really interesting packages. It's just a matter of whether they want to give up Bonemer. They do have kind of a glut of infielders now to some extent, but I think Bonemer is like one of their best prospects, if not their best prospect, aside from Rock, or you could even put him in front of Rock, just because I think Bonemer maybe has a bit more projectable from the bat standpoint. Rock's a better defender. A lot of ways to look at it, but very similar idea here. We're doing the same thing. The White Sox have about a coin flip chance of getting to the wild card round. We're going to value that out at about 3.6 mil. So this doesn't look as bad, but again, still a huge overpay. I would say the Angels set the foundation to trade Detmers in the offseason, which of course is kind of how a lot of these packages come to be. Mason Miller. This was the guy that I did a retrospective of after he was traded at the deadline from the Athletics to the Padres with the Leo DeVries trade, which seemed insane at the time, and I kind of think still maybe is a little bit insane. The problem I run into a bit with reliever valuation, and other people mentioned in my prior video, I don't think projected WAR is the way to approach this. Ben Clemens, shouting out him again, did a really good piece, and I love this quote. He said, as playoff odds and therefore World Series odds increase, teams will spend marginally more on each reliever, holding all else constant. To me, this is like the hardest thing to value from a postseason standpoint, is the dollar value of what you'd call like championship win probability added. So on the starter side of things, you could probably back into this. It was just more logical to do it from a WAR standpoint. If you do WAR on a reliever, it's just not going to work. But what is the value of those late inning outs where you're pushing win probability way up? If he gets out of a jam in the 8th and pitches a clean 9th, maybe that's more valuable than Tarik Skubal. I don't think it is. What I ended up doing was just taking like a flat, basically one start, and I don't love it. I do think the way to approach this is more of a win probability added standpoint. I get his surplus to about 28 million. I think I need to learn more. I'm admitting here my ignorance to some extent. Need to learn more about how you actually get to dollar values on relievers, because I do think to good teams, perhaps the Pirates could look at this and go, yeah, we'll give you Edward Florentino, who's a really fun bat. Take a look at his data really quickly. He's a super lift guy. Big loft, no chase, little zone, in-zone miss. Reminds me a bit of like a Riley Green in a way, where you have a ton of loft, hits the ball really hard. Expected numbers are fantastic. He's just going to have some zone miss. But I love the concept that if you fix some of that zone miss, as I think Riley Green has done, or at least Riley's become a bit more passive and his walk rate jumped, you could run into like a very fun bat. You don't want to maximize this average launch angle. I do think people run into that where it's like, oh, he's got a lot of loft. It's like, actually some of the best players in baseball hang in that like, let's say like 75th percentile area. So I do think there's some limitations in his swing, but he's a 50 future value bat through and through, no questions. And I think he could be the centerpiece of the Mason Miller package if the Padres really like him. And again, I'm not sure what the value of Mason Miller is to the Pirates from a WAR standpoint or a championship win probability added standpoint. It's hard. It's really hard to model it, and I'm kind of throwing up my hands a bit. So if anyone in the comments has thoughts as to a better way to approach this, I would love to hear it, because I do think win probability add is the better way to value relievers. This is why anytime we do a retro on a reliever deadline deal, it looks like a just egregious overpay. But teams, it's super important to have a name like this that you can rely on in late innings. I mean, he's striking out like 45% of batters. You're guaranteeing like 1 to 2 strikeouts across 4 hitters. That's incredibly valuable in the postseason. Also, Tarik Skubal is valuable in the postseason. How do those two kind of reconcile is a great question. I'm also just throwing out different teams here just because I wanted to show some different prospects. Very similar structure here of a 40 future value bat, 50 future value bat, alongside a 45 future value bat or arm. And I think a lot of teams could get this done. Dax Kilby, if the Yankees want to dangle him. Preller likes young prospects. Throw in Bryce Cunningham, Vandy arm, kind of interesting changeup that backed up a little bit in pro ball. Could the Brewers do this? Absolutely. Jefferson Caro is a really interesting catcher. Tyson Harden's like a major league ready arm that I like. A lot of names that I think these 4 teams are interesting as like, I wouldn't say sleepers. Let's say like maybe the Pirates and the Brewers are sleepers for Mason Miller. I saw a report that they checked in on him, the Brewers did. But yeah, I struggle a little with the valuation here. If the Padres actually want to be blown away on a Mason Miller offer, I just think it's going to be really hard to get it done. So those are all arms. Let's finish off with a bat. I don't do a lot of projecting on the bat side, but it's a good thing to look at because this is how you get into massive surplus areas where you really start to get like multiple stud prospects traded. Some of these 50 future, 55 future value, 60 future value types, which is kind of what we ran into. This is supposed to say Shea Langeliers. This is Langeliers. So it's not Mason Miller, it's Langeliers. And he is amazing. And I think this gets to the larger point of how valuable position players are from a projection standpoint relative to pitchers. Pitchers are tough to value. You have to discount so aggressively future years because of the injury probability. You don't really have to do that with bats. And on top of that, Langeliers is like projected as like I think Zips, these are some of the Zips future WAR projections I had. He's like a 3-4 WAR player of the next couple years. You have him on control. He's going to be cost controlled too. I mean, this is crazy. Like he's a chunky player. He's really good. He's a catcher. There's probably intangible stuff here from a game calling standpoint you could add in too. And I don't really know. Like to the Athletics, he's valuable, but I mean, they're clearly trying to rebuild to some extent. And I do think, again, Yankees could dangle a Dax Kilby and a Hess that would get you to like $70 million of value, which honestly isn't really that much of an overpay to me. This Red Sox package is kind of interesting. Give them Einstein and Witherspoon, 2 draftees from a draft a year ago for them, who Einstein shot up. I think he's a 50 future value arm. Witherspoon's taken a step back. I think he's in this 45 plus area. Miguel Bleis was a fun name that FanGraphs loved a couple years ago. Great batted ball data. Overall, though, you know, he's kind of a high variance guy. Maybe the Athletics like him. Rangers could double up and go Caden Scarborough and Yofran Castillo. Again, 250 future value guys here that would really, I think, put them on the table. And the Rangers in the past, we saw at the deadline last year, gave up way too much for Merrill Kelly. So they're a model-driven team. Sure, all teams are model-driven, but Rangers seem like they maybe do a little bit of feel stuff that can maybe push them into a trade like this for Langeliers. But yeah, I just wanted to show the difference in value of like, okay, Langeliers versus even a Detmers who has control because of how heavily I have to discount future WAR on pitchers just because of the injury stuff. I mean, this is how you get some of these guys that, you know, you're giving up massive prospect packages for. I hope this video was fun. So my predictions, again, roll through them. I said that I want Skubal to the Rays. Of course, it's probably the Dodgers. Who cares? Joe Ryan, I like to the Cubs. Reid Detmers, I don't think gets traded. I think the White Sox could offer an interesting package. The Pirates, you know, let's throw them to the Padres with Miller. Let's throw them to the Pirates. Let's have some fun. Let's have some chaos here. Edward Florentino, great bat. I think the Pirates can do something fun here. Why not go in this direction? Langeliers, I don't think gets traded. I do think the Yankees would be a great fit. I also think the Red Sox could get it done as well. And Breslow's wheeled and dealed a bunch. As to whether he gives up some stud arms, we'll see. But these teams that do good job on the pitching development side of things tend to like trading from that depth. And we saw this with the Mets. They made the Helsley trade and a bunch of other stuff. So yeah, I think there's a lot of probability above 0% the Langeliers gets traded. It's probably below 15% or so. Hope this video was fun. I'm going to do one recapping the deadline packages when we actually see what they are after the deadline. I'm going to try to do that the night of, which would be the 3rd of August, that Monday night that's going to go out. So keep an eye on this channel for that. I think I got a video coming out too on what makes a good fastball as well. Teasing a little here. Hope you enjoyed this. Hope you enjoyed my draft coverage as well. I'll link to that in the video description. My Substack too. Way to support me. A lot of stuff in the video description. Check that out. I'll be in the comments as well. See you guys soon.